honestly, I have no idea what I'm even gonna do with this. I don't have like a podcast. I don't have my own podcast. I've got my own YouTube channel where I talk about various things, and the most recent thing I've been talking about is my journey to Catholicism, or at the time, it was deciding whether or not that was a good choice or not. But let's start with you a little bit. Have you done any podcasts or have you had appearances before? I've seen you around on X a bit.
No, I haven't done anything. I kind of keep to myself. I think I'm a little shy, so I'm not as outgoing.
What got you into Bitcoin?
Honestly, what brought me to Bitcoin was just the idea of maybe getting rich,
Okay, sure.
and
And
then
when did that start?
that was happening probably around 2021, the end of 2021.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then after kind of looking into it a little more, started to kind of really get into it and just like, whoa, this thing is like a lot more philosophical and and deep than I could ever imagine. And so just kind of going went down that like economical like principle kind of rabbit hole, and then found myself really thinking about how that relates to theology.
Mm.
Um, so that's been pretty fascinating.
And what is your on the theology side of things? Where do you is your profile picture is Martin Luther, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So where are you? Do you consider yourself religious? And if you are, where do you fall in that framework?
I used to be religious, like a lot more religious, and religious meaning kind of like more disciplined or strict or rigid
Mm.
in that sense of the word. Um, I grew up Pentecostal, kind of Assembly of God.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No, what does that mean? There's so many different denominations, and I don't know what all the little nuances of each one, so I couldn't tell you what that is. I know it's falls under the umbrella of Protestant, but that's as far as I could
Yes.
tell you.
Yeah. Have you seen The Righteous Gemstones by chance?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask. I just finished season one last night with my wife. We just started watching that, and over the past 3 or 4 days, yeah, we went through season one, and we thought there was only one, maybe two seasons, and then we looked at the season like, oh, there's four of these. Okay, okay,
Yes.
it's fine. I love Danny McBride, and I think the show
Yes.
it has some flaws for sure in terms of like well-rounded characters, but it's hilarious, and yeah, all
Yes.
in all,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Yes,
So
I
yes,
would
I'm
say
familiar.
their satire towards like church dynamics. It's a little bit, extreme, but or exaggerated, I should say. But that's kind of what like the Pentecostals kind of are, just like very like spiritual. God told me this.
Hmm.
Just kind of like more experiential, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Kind of whatever we're feeling at the moment. So there wasn't really any real consistency with that. And as I was kind of growing up, I was kind of realizing that flaw. And so I was kind of like dabbling in other things and kind of realized, oh, wait a second, there are a whole lot more belief systems out there than the just this, because you kind of grow up thinking one way and believing one way, and you think that's the only way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and then and so I kind of like dabbled into Southern Baptists,
Hmm.
um, and now I am currently going to a PCA church, Presbyterian church. I'm not Presbyterian yet, although I'm open minded to it. But I would consider myself as a Reformed Baptist now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what part of the country are you in? Because I'm picking up a little bit of a southern accent.
Yep. I'm from Louisiana.
Okay. Okay.
No.
Gotcha. That was interesting. Louis, that maybe you can shed some light on this idea. So a game just came out called South of Midnight, and I played it for a little bit. It was on Steam, and then I was like, well, I don't know that this is really worth the $40 that I spent on it, so I'm gonna return it. I want to play it, but I'm gonna wait until it's on sale. But the main reason that I was interested in playing it is because it's set in the South. I don't know if it ever tells you what state that you're in, but there's bayous and there's a bunch of old timey or maybe recent timey, I don't know, kind of urban folklore from down in that area. And the South is always it's one part of the country that I haven't been in. I've been to Florida, Miami,
Yeah,
Fort Lauderdale here recently, but that's not really the South. It's I mean those are
right.
modernized cities. So I haven't been in the rural parts of anywhere. I haven't been in any state east of like basically east of Texas and south of Kentucky, like that whole section aside from Florida. So Mississippi, Georgia, Carolina, all that throughout there. I haven't been in. And it seems interesting to me, that whole region. And I was telling my brother that because he lives in Atlanta or Peachtree, which is outside of Atlanta now, and he bounces between there and California doing stuff for movies. So he's not really getting into the rural areas. And I said, "What am I inaccurate in thinking that there's something kind of I don't know, almost mystical about some of those areas?" And he said, "No, you're not wrong." And he thinks that his assumption is that the reason that I have that feeling is because a lot of the people that live in those areas aren't they're not very curious is the way that he said it. They just kind of
Mm,
where they were born is where they're going to live and they don't really care to go anywhere else. And so that um, localization, I guess, lends to folklore and storytelling that is unique to that area and it's not pulling from other areas. So it has its own kind of vibe to it. Can you shed some light on that? Is there any truth to that? Is there do you know what
yes.
do you know what I'm talking about? Have you traveled or you're like, wow, whatever. I don't know. It's just all the same to me.
No, no. I think I'm really understanding where you're coming from. It's only just recently, actually, that I've begun to kind of find this thing out. But it seems like in the South we're kind of behind on some
Hmm.
of like social developments
Hmm.
happening. Like one key thing that you said that we're not typically very curious.
Hmm.
I'd find that to be very true.
Interesting.
Um, Yes. Everything and everybody here is just pretty much like family oriented, like simple
Hmm.
minded. Let's like just worry about, our family. Let's go to work. Let's not really worry too much about all the other things going on, unless it's like politics. um,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. So when it comes to not curious, do you not see people with like purple hair and guys dressing up as women and like the whole trans thing? Is that just like, what are you even doing if somebody tries that? It's like you should probably not live here if that's what you're doing.
that does seem to be the vibe that we give off. Yes. So I don't see. You'd have to go to like some of your bigger cities to kind of see some of that stuff.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I imagine just going out to some population 250, you see some trans individuals like this is more out of place than it already is out of place. This is out of place
Yes.
to a whole nother level.
Yes. Yes. I think we also probably give off a good like a vibe that um, like those people aren't particularly safe. Like
Hmm.
you don't they don't feel safe. Not like in an endangered way physically, but like just someone's probably going to make a comment and it's going to be very rigid and
Yeah.
it's going to be offensive.
I mean, you're going to be an outside. You're all like even in a place like LA or New York or Seattle, you're an outsider because most people are not trans. And so if you're already an
Yeah.
outsider in a place where that is more the norm than I don't know, somewhere like rural Appalachia or rural Louisiana,
Yeah.
like a bayou community of 13 huts or something. It's like I don't even know that you would have the idea to come to you. Like maybe I
Hmm.
mean a lot of that stuff I think people encounter online, but you have to be interested to go to the certain places online for that to even show. I don't know. I don't even know how we got
Yeah.
here. Anyhow, so that
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
aside, when did you start noticing the connections between theology and Bitcoin, or like maybe more broadly speaking, just um, religion in Bitcoin, like the overlap there, or maybe
Yeah.
money. Maybe it's not just
Yeah.
Bitcoin. Maybe it's money.
I think that's a huge part of it is kind of realizing that Bitcoin is sound money.
Mm,
And when you dive into what sound money is and kind of reading some of Mises's work and figuring out kind of how all this stuff works, because I mean, obviously, I think you could agree with me. We're not really aware of what sound money is, being from America, or I guess anywhere for that matter. This is kind of like a new phenomenon, with
yeah.
Bitcoin, where we're really starting to think about these things in a deep way. Um, but the one aspect that I think started to overlap for me was this idea of individual sovereignty.
Hmm.
Um, and from the Reformed background of faith or theology, there is a core principle there in which there's sort of a decentralization taking place um, within this kind of like theological terms, um, where we kind of look to Scripture as
Mm-hmm.
being like our standard for kind of what we believe and hold true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it gets murky in the sense you're going to have many different interpretations of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, um, but that's almost um, that's almost the cost of what happens when you kind of have like more of a decentralized approach with a religion, I guess, or like a Christianity or a belief. Um, I guess in the same way you could say, uh, Bitcoin has a blockchain, and we all kind of like refer to the blockchain. There's no like human authoritative influence on
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin, in the same way that um, Reformed theology, at least, it's really trying to attempt and this is most Protestants. Can't even say that word, and I am one. uh, Protestants,
Mm-hmm.
um, where there's this idea that there's really no central authority, kind of like the Catholicism. There is like a central authority, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, where was I going with that?
You're talking about the decentralization, the nature of I'm guessing where you're going is how each I don't know if you were going this direction or not. So it seemed like where you might have been going was that each of the different Protestant denominations, of which there are, I don't know, something like 10,000 plus different. I mean, especially if you include all the non-denominational one-off churches where they might have some one tiny variation from the guy down the street, and you've got all these different things, but they're all referring to the same book,
Yes, that's right.
same
That's right.
core thing.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes. Um, and so yeah, just kind of noticing that pinpoint is kind of what really got me interested. Well, what else can sound money or Bitcoin like resonate with some of these theological principles?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I began. But I think it hinges on the sovereignty of the individual aspect. Um,
Yeah, I would
I
agree.
think that's
I think
where,
without that, and I think this is something like somebody like Jordan Peterson has really pounded home. And I'm going
yeah.
through actually three different Catholic catechisms currently, and they have in one of them that I'm in, it really, really drives that point home that if you don't
Mm,
have a well-rounded individual, it's not, this is my words, but I'm kind of paraphrasing here. If you don't have a good individual, then anything that that individual is a part of has the
Mm.
chance or is guaranteed to break down. So if you have a
Yeah.
bunch of broken individuals trying to make a functioning society, like well, like how good of a car are you going to have when every piece in the car is cracked and falling apart and missing chunks and teeth out of the gears and the belt like
Yes.
obviously that car is going to, if it even gets anywhere, it's going to turn to dust half a mile down the road.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
here's a question that I've got for you because it's something that I was just mulling over the other day in regards to kind of the what you were talking about in regards to Protestants referring to the same book. And the Protestants, I would say at the core of their belief system, aside from the divinity of Jesus and Christ and all that, but the kind of the core principle that sets it apart from Catholicism is the idea of sola scriptura and
Right.
sola fide, by faith alone and
Mm.
by scripture alone. There's no authority, there's no pope, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question. Do you think
Hmm.
that somebody can be a Bitcoiner with only the white paper? That's all they have. Literally
Mm.
nothing else.
I think so. Um, yeah. Well,
I guess it
I
would
guess it
depend. We have to
depends.
start on what you mean by a Bitcoiner.
That's right. Yeah. I suppose it depends on what the context would be, like, is it just this paper and there's really no prior context to uh, what kind of prior knowledge they have before coming into it?
Hmm.
Because we are all coming with our different presuppositions,
Right.
specific, especially me, I kind of tapped into this certain kind of niche of theology and Bitcoin, um, that that I find particularly interesting and valuable. But somebody else might find that boring, and just like, that's not interesting. Um, but I guess given my background or my context, I would find that interesting. And reading the white paper, um, with a certain, I guess, presupposition. I guess it depends on yeah, on what you're working with.
Because the way that I think of a Bitcoin, if I think of somebody that is a Bitcoiner, not just somebody that has Bitcoin, and I think there's a
Mm,
major difference there because somebody could have Bitcoin exposure through any number of ways. They could have an ETF or they could have some MicroStrategy shares,
yeah.
or it seems like pretty soon they could have some GameStop. And if they just have 20 shares of GameStop stock and they're like, oh, I'm a Bitcoiner, like, okay, well, in what sense? Well,
Mm,
I'm invested in
mm,
GameStop. It's like, oh, is that
yeah.
really a Bitcoiner? Like you show them some of the
Right.
memes, like of the thousands upon thousands of Bitcoin memes. Well, what does this one mean? I don't know. I don't get it. Do you know who Yellow is? Who? Okay. Who's
Right.
Max Geyser?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, is that person really a Bitcoiner?
Right. Right.
I don't know. I think to be
Mm,
a Bitcoiner, self custody is kind of paramount. And as
mm,
far as I know, there's nothing in the white paper that talks about self custody. And
mm,
I think
mm.
to be a Bitcoiner, you need to understand things that even Satoshi didn't even talk about in the white paper. A lot of the stuff, like he didn't talk about any connection to theology in the white paper. He didn't
Right.
talk about the
Right.
connection to all the different things that money touches. He was strictly about what Bitcoin is and what its function is
Mm,
and the idea behind. I mean, it's only 9 pages long, so it's a real short document. So
right. Right.
I think that it would be very difficult to end up as what I would consider, what Dell would consider a Bitcoiner if somebody all they had, yeah, let's say that they have other ideas about money, they've gone to school or even haven't, whatever. They've been a part of the world. I'm not saying like, oh, take a person in a vacuum and then you airdrop this
Yes.
paper onto them and like, oh, this is the only thing I know aside from
Yeah.
anything else. Period. I'm not saying that. But
Yes.
I just find it difficult for somebody to be a Bitcoiner without the broader context of the Bitcoin community and all of the things, the books and the podcasts and the blogs and the memes and the self custody. And I mean, even in the white paper, I think he talks about mining and nodes being like the same thing. And now
Mm.
those are kind of separate.
Hmm.
I don't think he
Yes.
envisioned the hash rate being
Yeah. Oh,
what
right.
it is now. It's insane.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is a really good point and a really good thought. Um, yeah, very good thought, very good question. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting.
And the reason I even got there is because I was thinking about a podcast, a Catholic podcast that I was looking at, because I
Mm.
can tell you how I even got on this whole Catholic thing here in a second. But
Yeah.
the question was asked, which or it might have been a debate, I forget. But the question was asked, which is more important, tradition or scripture? And I thought,
Mm.
well, certainly it's scripture, obviously. Like how do you have
Mm.
Christianity without scripture? It's got to be that. And
Mm.
the
Mm.
Catholic said the answer is tradition because there wasn't even a
Mm.
canon of scripture for the first, I think it was until the Council of Nicaea in 325 or
Yeah,
something. So it
that's a
was
good point.
only tradition that they had
Yeah.
before that was agreed upon. Like, oh, that's a really good point. Like most things are that way. Like most
Yeah.
games are figured out over time and kind of before you codify, okay, this is here we go. This is a
Yeah.
work this thing that works. Let's put it into rules. Like even Bitcoin, he was doing all this testing and figuring out before he wrote the white paper. So
Yeah.
you could I think loosely call that tradition. So the whole
Yes.
reason I
Yeah.
got in this Catholic thing is I grew up Protestant. My parents bounced around between all sorts of different churches. I couldn't have told you what the denominations were, but I know it was a lot of different styles. And that started a questioning in my mind at a real young age of like 10-ish, 12-ish years old. Like, how is this all the same thing? And
Mm.
these are wildly different. Like one week we're going to a church where it's Baptist and it's very
Mm-hmm.
traditional. We're sitting here, we're singing hymns, and then the next week we're going to a church that my mom wanted to go to because she doesn't like it. It's too stuffy for her. So we're going to a charismatic church where people are laughing and falling over in their seats, and it's like the stuff that you see on TV where they're laying on hands and people they're falling over, and like this is
Mm-hmm.
all the same thing. It would be
Yeah.
like going to a football game and one time they're playing on the ice and knocking things around like hockey, and then the next week you go and they're playing what you would normally call baseball, but be like, no, it's all football. It's like these don't look the
Yeah.
same at all. It's like, well, they have sticks in both of them and they hit things,
Mm.
so it's the same things. Like, is it
Mm-hmm.
really
Right. Right.
though?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for from my later teens until my early 30s ish, late, yeah, mid-ish teens to like late 20s or so. I didn't call myself anything. I don't know. I was probably like I was spiritual. I dabbled in different things. I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Living and Dead, and I was just kind of like I never at no point in my life have I called myself atheist because like I can't look at life and go, oh, just happened. I know there are plenty of people that do that, and all right,
Right.
if that works for you, like, okay, I'm not really sure how you do that, but and I fully
Yes.
understand that a lot of it has to do with my upbringing in a Christian household in a Western society that is largely shaped by Christian tradition. I get all that. I can't help it. Like, I can't just erase that and just go, well, I'm just going to walk away from all of those ideas and try to start from scratch. Like, okay, good luck
Mm-hmm.
with that. Who has ever just started from scratch? No one.
Right.
So,
Right.
this all said, I was thinking about a story to write, and I needed some antagonists, and the idea of hooded figures attacking a convent in the night came to mind. I was like, well, the KKK, those are hooded figures. Did they dislike Catholics? I just was just a question. Like, I mean, I don't know if they did if they were like totally in league with Catholics and loved Catholics. Well,
Mm.
this isn't going to work. I'll have to figure something else out. So I looked it up. It's like, oh yeah, that was like public enemy number one, more than Jews, more
Wow.
than blacks. The Catholics were they thought the like an absolute danger to the country. They thought the Pope was sending Catholics over to take the country over, and that's why they had Catholic schools was to indoctrinate children. And so they would burn
Wow.
schools down, and they would attack Catholic priests. It's like they were super anti-Catholic. I was like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I was
Mm.
raised in a church that was super anti-Catholic, like the Protestant. That's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, huh? So I did some
Mm-hmm.
more research, and it just led down this path of realizing that the Catholic Church was not at all what I thought it was. Like people don't worship Mary. There isn't
Hmm.
all these different things that like the Pope is not infallible in the way that people like, oh, the Catholic Church thinks that the Pope can't sin ever. It's like
Yeah.
that's not what
Yeah.
that means. Yes, there is Pope
Yeah.
infallibility, but it's a very specific thing for like when he's giving an official decree. Like he can't mess up the decree. It's just like it becomes Catholic
Yeah.
law, basically. That's all that means. It's not that he can stab somebody. He's like, well, he gets off with it because he's the Pope. No, that's not what that means.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so it started this whole path down this trajectory, and then yeah, now and I ultimately my wife and I have gone to a few Latin masses in the area. I have no interest in the more modern version of the Catholic Mass. It seems very much
Mm-hmm.
like a Protestant thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of overlap between religion as a whole and money, and then I would say with the correct religion, whatever that is, I'm of the belief that that it's the Christian religion and the best money. And then you've got other ones that are they going to work? I mean,
Yeah.
they're working. Like the
Right.
world
Right.
isn't on a
Right.
Bitcoin standard, and
Yeah.
it you know people would say it's not working. It's not working. Everything's falling apart. Okay, you're alive. You're able to go buy food. It might not be working in the best way possible, but it's functioning. I think we can
Yes.
agree to that.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Really good stuff. It's actually interesting. The part of Louisiana I'm in is pretty heavily Catholic, um, and which kind of basically came from the Cajuns or the Arcadians. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if you're familiar with them at all,
No, I've never
but
heard
they.
Arcadian. I've heard Cajun, and I just always
Mhm.
thought that was like French people mixed with the South.
Yes, yeah. So that's kind of where the Cajun comes from. These Arcadians.
What is
Um,
an Arcadian? I've never heard that before.
it's a good question. I can Google it real quick. I think they came from. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Who are the Arcadians? Arcadians are the descendants of 17th and 18th century French settlers in the Canadian
There we go.
maritime provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and New England, and parts of Quebec and northern Maine, who later became known as Cajuns in Louisiana. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And they were heavily oppressed, but they had brought so they came over to Louisiana, but they had brought a pretty heavy Catholicism with them. Um, and then also kind of brought
Hmm.
some weird practices from France, I guess, uh, which I'm sure you're familiar with voodoo. So it's like kind of like this
Like
Catholicism
what?
mixed, huh? Say that again.
Wait, they brought Catholicism and voodoo?
So they mixed Catholicism with a some kind of like magic stuff that they had brought from France. So that that's why it's called voodoo. So it's really interesting, very fascinating.
And then and then voodoo like it caught on with the Haitians and the Caribbean or something?
Yeah, yeah, it's very odd. I don't know exactly how that happened, but that's why it's kind of like you go to New Orleans, it is very prominent to voodoo's very prominent to like the New Orleans culture.
Well, I just never would have guessed it came from France.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah.
I got to ask
Um,
Grok about the origins of voodoo.
yes, yes. That'll be an interesting topic. But yeah, down here we're pretty heavily Catholic from our area, so it's pretty interesting because there is like a pressures kind of run high with the Protestants of our area, with the Catholics of our area. But in my opinion, um, many of the Protestants are kind of like ex-Catholic, and I kind of view them as being quite Catholic, which is very funny to me. Um, but let's see, I wanted to talk about one particular thing that you had said, but I can't quite remember. Um, so I wanted to ask you. Oh, okay, I figured it out. Sorry. Um, Catholicism. I don't know too much about Catholicism. I know a little bit, but it's interesting when they kind of hold on to the traditions versus like the sola scriptura. Um, I kind of hold to traditions as well, and I think Reformed theology does as well, where they're holding to strong traditions. Reformed theology, they'll actually say is kind of Catholic in the sense of like the universal Christian faith.
Hmm.
Um, but as you know, Luther was also a Catholic monk, and despite his many flaws, um, he actually never intended to do what he did by breaking away from the church, which
100%.
is
Yeah. I think he was a
yes,
little impatient, and then things got out of his hands, and he's just kind of like, ah. I think he had
yes,
some very. So I listened. So just real quick, I listened to two biographies on him. So over 40 hours worth of content just on that person because I was curious, why did this happen? What happened there? And is that what he
yeah,
wanted to do, and why? So yeah, no, you're spot on that that was not his goal.
yes. Um, and in doing that, and alongside with the printing press, he was
Yeah.
able to he was able to achieve this reformation. But in Reformed circles, you'll often hear that as a faith people or group of people, we'll use the term always reforming. So it tries to get us back on track to Scripture. So
Hmm.
traditions are like very important, I would say, and obviously, I think we all have our traditions that we cling on to. But there's kind of like to Luther's point. There's a point in which tradition can go too far, and we have to kind of step back and say, well, what is our standard for this? Like let's get the rule book that we made and kind of go back and reflect to this. Um, so it's kind of interesting. I wouldn't say that it's an either or kind of thing. I would say that you need both tradition and scripture helping one another side by side.
Oh,
Um,
100%. I
yeah,
would not say that it's only one or the other either. And I in the Catholic Church, as far as I understand, like I'm no Catholic apologist, so I can't just mouth things off and oh, did you know? And like I'm certainly not that. But the way I understand it is that's absolutely the case. Is that you need both, 100%,
yeah,
and that's where the magisterium, which consists of the Pope and all the cardinals working in concert, guided by, they would say, the Holy Spirit, to come up with decisions about various changes. And as with any large entity, change is going to come about rather slow. And I think that this is
yeah,
what happened with Martin Luther is that maybe he was a little impatient, or the people around him were a little bit patient, or it was just human impatient being was impatientness being what it was, combined with, as you pointed out, the printing press and the speed that information was able to travel and be like, oh wow, this is good ideas, and then things just kind of happened rapid fire. And it wasn't until
yes,
after he died that the Council of Trent came about, and they did enact some of these things, really locking down what the indulgences meant. And people will say now, if they're trying to attack Catholicism, like, oh, did you know that the Catholic Church still has indulgences? Yes, they do. And it's not the way that you think it is. And a lot
yeah,
of these things aren't the way that you think it is. And so in this journey of becoming Catholic, I came across a blog on, I think it was called like the Catholic Gentleman or the Gentleman Catholic or something like that. And it
hmm,
was like 10 reasons why you should become Catholic. And in the first reason, somewhere right early on it said something like, um, there's basically nothing that the Catholic Church in the past 2,000 years hasn't thought of. Somebody out of the billions upon billions of people that have called themselves Catholic have thought about it. And in
Yeah.
G.K. Chesterson's book, Orthodoxy, he says this repeatedly throughout the book. Like, I thought he was so smart. He came up on a hillside to overlook like a viewpoint. He's using like metaphorical
Yeah.
language here. And when he got there, he realized there was already 20 other flags planted by Catholics that had been here and moved on before he ever reached the top. He's like, oh, okay, I'm not so smart.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yes.
it's been thought about,
Right.
buddy. It's
Yes.
and
Yes.
in regards to um like yeah, Martin Luther and what he wanted, the indulgence thing was being abused for sure. There were definitely
Yeah.
people that were abusing it, and just like anything that you're going to have, there's a lot of abuse. And something on that point I didn't realize, but part of the reason that the sexual scandals have gotten so much media and attention in for what's happened in the Catholic Church is because of how well the Catholic
Mm.
Church has documented those things, whereas other religions they just
Mm.
completely keep it under the
Oh
rug.
yeah.
Like
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
understand that there's been a lot of bad stuff that's happened in the Catholic Church, and I'm not trying to dismiss that at all. And I'm
Yeah.
not trying to say, yeah, yeah, but those guys. I'm just asking a
Sure.
question here. How
Sure.
much worse has it been in Islam? Maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe it's been so much
Yeah.
better. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
shining beacon of the way that humanity should be over there.
Right.
I don't know. I look at pictures of the Gaza Strip and it makes me go, I don't think they have everything figured out. I think they might be
Yeah.
missing a few things on how to function as
Yeah.
humans, but
Yes.
I
Yeah, I mean, and if you look back on any past of religion, you're going to see a lot of bad stuff. You know,
yeah.
uh, we're not all clean. So which kind of brings me. You had mentioned Protestants kind of refer to sola scriptura and sola fide. I'd
Hmm.
say another really important aspect of that is sola gratia, which is by grace alone.
Mm.
Um, and this is actually something I've really been understanding more deeply and fundamentally over the past few years. Um, that, um, well, I'll ask you this: what do you think? What does grace mean to you? Like when I say that, what comes up to you for you?
Just the word on its own outside of a Christian context.
Or both. You could say what does the word mean outside of it, or within the
And
context.
the very first thing, if you were to just ask me like a name association thing, I would probably, or like a word association thing. There you go. I kind of gave the
Yeah.
I would think of it as somebody's name. I would think, oh, it's somebody's name. You're like,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
well, what do you
Gotcha.
think of the word means aside from somebody's name? Like, I don't even know anybody named Grace. It would just,
Right.
I guess that's how I would think. I don't know why I would think that first, but um, in a non I couldn't tell you what the dictionary definition is. I'll pull it up here in a second because I am curious.
Sure.
But outside of that definition, I'm well, or let me see. I guess I'll take a. You say grace, so I guess it's thanks like before a meal. Let's say hang on, let's say grace. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of a I would say it's something like an appeal to something higher than yourself,
Mm.
and um, to receive grace is like a judge could be graceful, or a ballet dancer could be graceful. It's got a lot of
Mm.
meaning. Um,
Yes. Yes.
I yeah, and then in the Christian context, the way that I think of it, and I don't really know how to wrap my head around this idea, but the way that I conceptualize it is that it is because of God's grace that we can even be saved for the stain of sin that we carry from Adam's screw up.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is actually the problem that Nietzsche starts to speak about a lot. His great, as Jordan Peterson talks about, Nietzsche's his great, popular "God is dead" phrase. Kind of meaning that, um, and especially Jordan Peterson has this perspective as well, where what does it actually mean to believe in God, right? And if I believe in this God, this should affect my actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem that Nietzsche points out often is that, well, that ideal to to live up to, I guess, the standard of what it would mean to believe in God is impossible. So Nietzsche also comes up with another impossible solution by saying, let's create our own values within ourselves, which, if you listen to Peterson a lot, you'll find out that Peterson also thinks that's a impossibility to do that, because there are different existential things that come on us that we just kind of believe outside of ourselves. Like, why is it good to brush my teeth every morning, right? Like, where's that coming from? When you get down to like some of the most minute things that we do in our lives, like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of outside things um, coming outside from us. But um, the point here that Luther um, demonstrates quite nicely is, I don't know if you knew what Luther did before he was a monk.
Uh, if I remember correctly, he worked with his dad in the mines or did something with his family.
Yes, he was doing some of that, but he was also studying to become a lawyer.
Mm.
One of the things that he kind of writes about is you can get the hint he's obsessed with rules and like the regulations and the law,
Mm.
and he has this struggle with God about, I can't live up to your ideals or your
Oh yeah,
standards.
all of his stuff where he'd be in confession for hours and hours, and then he'd keep on
He,
thinking like, "Oh, I've gotten to the bottom of all the things," and then he'd be like, "Oh, but I'm prideful now for thinking that I got to the final sin, and so now I got to confess that," and it's just like this ever receding
yes,
horizon of confessing his sins. Like, I can't ever do
yes,
this. Like, dude,
yes,
I think you're missing the point here.
that's right, that's right, yes. And when he finds out, there's a particular scripture verse where it says, "You are saved by grace through faith alone."
Hmm.
He said that that was like almost his like conversion point. So it's
Hmm.
really odd because he was a monk for years before that, and when he read that in the New Testament, he was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like it changed. It was like a complete game changer. So the emphasis on grace that is that you contribute nothing to your own salvation, right? So it's this idea that you're right. Nietzsche's right. You can't live up to the ideal of what it means to believe in God. And so, what does that mean? Well, the implication there is just like almost a child, like raising their arms to a father in pain, just like, I don't know what else to do. Like, come get me. like,
Yeah,
I,
but that child raised his arms to his father.
yes, yeah, yes, and this is a this is actually something I've been wrestling with. What's that about?
You cut out for a second there.
Sorry, am I back
No,
in?
it's all right. Yeah, I hear
Okay,
voice, but the video kind of it froze up.
yeah, it's trying to connect again.
Okay.
Okay, am I back?
Not yet. Oh, oh, let's see. Might be back soon. I think part of the difficulty in dealing with this very subject is knowing where ideas originate from. And what I was going to talk to him about. Okay, there he is.
All right, I'm back.
So
Yeah,
I, I don't
the
I don't know enough about Nietzsche to comment on his ideas all that much, but I have never thought that being a Christian is about, I guess it depends on what you mean by living up to this ideal set forth by God. My goal is to continually strive to reach that idea, knowing that it's probably impossible to reach.
yeah,
But in the Catholic tradition, there's all these different saints that we have as examples of people that have lived really good examples of life, that really good ways of living. Does that mean that they were without sin? They were just these spotless, flawless beings? No, by no means. We lost them again. Hmm. Technology doing technology things. Oh, I don't know how to help him, so we'll just chill here. Hope that he comes back. It's yeah, I can't comment on Nietzsche's ideas too much because I don't know them all that well. But if the idea is that we're supposed to reach some kind of ideal, well, oh, maybe back. Maybe back.
sorry, Dell. I don't know what's going
Hmm.
on.
No worries. Internet does goofy things sometimes.
All right. Yeah, you were saying you didn't quite know the some of Nietzsche's work.
Well, I don't know what he means, but when you're talking about if we can't live up to this ideal or we can't reach the ideal, I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember exactly how you worded it in regards to set. Basically, if we can't do this God path, then we should do the path that we generate ourselves.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Which is sort of the fundamental, understanding or idea of nihilism. Um, um, but um, yeah, Nietzsche is kind of
Oh, it's
playing
cutting
this
out real
out.
bad. Try no
Ah,
video. Just try just audio.
okay, let's see. How am I?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. All right. What was I saying?
In regards to Nietzsche and his reason for not basically, so what is his reason for us coming up with our own ideal to strive for and toward? Because we can't do the God path.
Yes, I believe that's kind of what I'm taking from Nietzsche when he's saying all these things. Um, he actually kind of says like the tech like the technologies that we're kind of coming up with like with science are kind of killing God in some way, meaning that we're not needing Him anymore. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I see that, but I don't. I think he maybe is missing the point of
oh yeah,
a lot of things, to say the least.
yes,
That
I
was
think
something that
so.
my wife and I were debating early on in our whole like last 3 odd month of this journey of just talking about it nonstop every day. And like, okay, well, do we need to go to church if we have AI to tell us exactly what is the best path? Well, one, AI isn't there yet by any stretch of the imagination. So maybe we could get to a point in the future. Maybe that's next year. Maybe it's a month from now. It doesn't seem like it. I don't know where in AI you can have an ongoing conversation with it. It's like, okay, what do I do here? And it just maps out your whole day. Is that how you
Yeah,
want to live?
Yeah.
Not really. It's not how I want to live. I don't want to just be this puppet for an AI telling me what to do. That seems kind of unpleasant. But that isn't what the point of religion is anyways. It's not, we're not trying to just submit ourselves to some puppet master. It's knowing what the correct choice to make is and what is going to benefit ourselves and other people now, tomorrow, and down the line. And having the wherewithal to make those decisions, not have something go, oh, hey, look, I've got this all programmed out, and here I just need you to walk through
Yeah.
these checkpoints
Yeah.
so that you can complete the quests.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually have been really coming thinking about this idea, but I'm starting to think that one of our main purposes is to know ourselves and to know others, and in that to connect with ourselves and to connect with others, um, which also means kind of to plug Peterson again, like this idea of like trying to diminish suffering as much as possible to almost make the human condition as bearable as possible. Um, and I think that's a really good goal. I think I agree with him on that. Um, as far as like religion's emphasis on this salvation, that to me is like I'm getting to a point where it sounds really hard to wrap my head around of like what does that mean? Because I've often experienced, and maybe you could relate to this somehow. I don't know, um, where where evangelism seems to miss people for the sake of trying to get them to like believe something or buy something, I guess. So it's like this, I don't know, this like this sales rep mentality instead of like really trying to connect with people and trying to love people and trying to be curious about like what are they thinking? Where are they coming from? What's going on here? And maybe how could I help or how could they help me? Um, and I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts about what your whole um, thoughts are on about like this idea of salvation and religion and the church and um, it's pretty funny. I think if any Reformed Baptists would ever hear this, they'd be pretty embarrassed by that. But I feel like I'm thinking more about some of these things
Well,
and
that's
about how
good.
it
Thinking's
relates
good.
with people.
Well, okay. Do you have a job?
I do.
Okay. Do you enjoy the job? Do you like it enough to show up on time generally, or do you hate it? Or
Yeah, I'm kind of. I say I like it enough to keep showing up.
okay, let me. Have you ever had a job that you really liked?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I have.
Or even if you haven't, could you imagine one? Let's do that. Let's just do a fake one. Imagine a job that you really like. You go
Yeah.
into whatever this career is.
Yes.
Now, this is a question that I had in regards to the sola gratia thing that you were talking about, by grace alone. I was pondering this question recently, in the past month or so. I was asking myself, why do I go to work? Do I go to work because I was given the job,
Mm.
or do I go to work because I want to keep the job? And I don't have an answer for you,
Yeah.
because it's not either one of those. It's both of them at the same time. I went and applied and gave an application to the job because I wanted the job, but I also only did that because I thought that there was a chance of getting the job. Like, I'm not going to go and give my resume to, I guess you could always say there's a non-zero chance, but is there really a non-zero chance that I'm going to be Jeff Bezos's driver? It seems so unlikely that
Right.
the the whole mission to try and get my resume into his hand to be his driver, like, that would be a whole, like,
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
long job in and of itself. Like I don't think I would ever even be able to get close enough to him to say, "Hey, Mr. Bezos, here you go. I'd like to be a driver. Here's my resume." He'd be like, "What do? This is not how that's done, buddy. No, throw it in the garbage." Like
Yes,
I
yes,
have a driver.
yes.
I've trusted my driver for the last 15 years. I know him by name. Like I, who even are you? So
Right.
no. So I'm probably not getting that job. So the reason that I go to the job that I have and do the various things that I do is, well, it's multiple. So is it grace alone? Well, in a sense, yes. But I think if we put everything on God and say, oh, we don't have any control here, then we're back to or to Sam Harris's idea of determinism. And maybe that is the case. Maybe we are all just automatons playing out our roles in some grand orchestra that was set into motion before time existed. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not going to sit here
yeah,
and say, "Oh, I know for a fact these are the things." It's like I've said a bunch of times with Bitcoin. Do I know for a fact that Bitcoin is the answer? No, but I don't know of a better one because I know that the current monetary system that we're in is completely messed up. That I am
yes,
utterly convinced of.
yes,
So there are certain things that I am utterly convinced of, like I will die. Most of the people that I know around me are going to die. Now, there's other people that are in Silicon Valley. I'm like, well, not with the advances that we have. You see what's coming
yeah,
down. Okay, all right.
yeah,
Your mind will be uploaded into the mainframe. Well,
right.
all right, maybe. I'm not even sure that I want that. Um, I don't know, but in terms of like what you were saying with that child raising his hands to it because he doesn't know what else to do. Well, he's still doing that.
Yes,
Still
yes,
doing that. It's like it's
that's right.
very similar in regards to like, hey, I don't know where else to turn. I'm not sure what to do here in regards to my life, and people turn to God. I'm not that person. I'm not
Yes,
the person
yeah,
that you hear about. It's like, oh, I was strung out on drugs and I was turning tricks in alleyways just to get my next fix, and I was doing every rotten thing under the sun, like that Keith guy in the Righteous Gemstones or whatever. It's like, oh, I was a Satanist or something. It's like that wasn't me. Like
yes,
I, the the thing that I my wife and I talked about is our life is good. Like we
yes,
don't need religion because we were so far down a dark path that we didn't know where else to turn. It wasn't certainly wasn't that. I
yes,
was
yes.
thinking where I was at is like it's good,
Mm,
but could it be better? I
mm-hmm.
mean, it's at the very least, I am doing this as kind of an experiment because if after a year or so of going to mass, and this is what we've agreed upon, is that for basically Easter to Easter is we're going to be going to church and we're going to
Yeah,
be going to mass
yeah.
unless we can't because of some unforeseen circumstances. And at the end of that year, if our life is noticeably worse in like every conceivable way, then we'll really take things into consideration. Be like,
Yeah,
well, maybe
right,
this
sure.
wasn't the best idea.
Sure, sure, right,
And
right.
I'm not talking about people like giving me a hard time for being a Catholic, or I don't mean that. I mean like I don't know. I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I commend you for like searching for some of these answers. You know, like I am not even particular at this point. I'm not even particularly this like rigid about you need to believe like this way or think this way. Um, and so yeah, I commend you for like you and your wife, looking for these answers. Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what do you what do you think is driving this exploration for you and your wife?
well, so that kind of gets to the point of why even go to why be religious at all? Why even be spiritual? We could start there.
Mm-hmm.
Why have we can go even zoom out even further? Why have any framework of being whatsoever? Why not just bounce from moment to moment? Just I guess I'm hungry, so I'm gonna go eat whatever my eyes first lay upon. Oh, look, Cheetos, great. That
Right.
I don't remember buying these. I guess it's what the first thing I saw when I was in the store, and that's just what ended up in my grocery cart. Like you're just bumbling through life like a ping pong ball, not paying attention to how anything
Mm.
happened. You're just existing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't seem like a real good way. That it seems like having a little bit more intention in your
Yeah.
life would be a good way to go. So we got to zoom in a little bit. So how do you find that intention in your life? What things do you use to guide yourself? Well, we could, I suppose, try Nietzsche's idea and find it from within. We're not using
Yes.
any sort of existing
Yeah.
framework. Well,
Right.
good luck with that because you already are in some sort of existing framework. You exist somewhere. Like you weren't plopped into existence in the middle of a forest. Here you go, figure it out. There's nobody else. A 35-year-old adult. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make society
Yes.
do it, culture do it all like I you don't even have language at this point. You don't even know what numbers are. Like you just appeared. Okay, well that clearly doesn't work. So you have some built-in framework. Well, depending on where you were born, your framework is going to be a little bit different. The guy that's born in Mumbai versus the guy that's born in Paris versus the guy whatever. Your framework is going to be Eastern largely based, or it's going to be Western culture. It's going to be some kind of culture derived thing. Well, how
Yes.
did that culture decide upon how they got where they're at? Well, probably some people realized that certain ways of doing things resulted in problems for them, for the people around them, for society. And
Yes.
other ways of doing things resulted in much better situations. Hey, people weren't mad at me. This is these Peterson's talked about the play and the rats and how they play. And even though the bigger
Yes.
rat could win all the time, if
Yeah.
he does win all the time, then the other rats don't want to play. And it's like, okay, well, the fun of doing this is being able to play. So I got to let the little rats win sometimes. So
Yes.
there's that. Well, if rats can figure that out, then we, being far more able to put pieces together than rats, should be able to figure things out a bit more complex than that.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
ultimately leads to the question of, okay, what's the best framework for people throughout time? And then
Yes.
what I did, and this is kind of where my wife and I got here, was let's look and see what different frameworks have begot.
Sure.
Let's
Sure.
look over here in India. What do they got? Do they have a space program? Do they have towering cities? Do they have light rails? Do they have No, they don't have that. They got a lot of trash in the streets. They got a lot of squalor and they got a lot of no, they don't. They,
Yes.
yeah, they got some industry. It's getting a little bit better. It's on the rise these days. Okay, I'm not sure what exactly to attribute that to. Globalism, other ideas coming in there, investments, etc. Okay, sure, maybe. Huh. It's not doing real great over there. Okay, let's look at Australia. That's a little bit different. Okay, we look around.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
Western Europe really seems to have figured something out about
Yes.
500,
Y-
1,000 years ago. Because holy crap, look at these
Yes.
cathedrals, look at this art, look at holy
That's
crap,
right.
they something they locked into something there. Well, what was
Yes.
that? What was that? This whole
Right.
place, this whole America's place. What is? How did this get here? How did this whole land get here? Oh, there's this thing that swept across the world called Christianity and has led to, yes, there's been some problems. I grant you that, but the exception proves the
Sure.
rule. By and large, Christianity has improved the world more dramatically than anything else ever.
Yes. Yes.
So that seems to be pretty good. I mean, a large reason that I decided that Catholic was the way to go is Tolkien.
Yeah.
Like C.S.
Yeah.
Lewis gets thrown around as being this great author, but I I, I don't know that the Chronicles of Narnia are going to be remembered 100 years from now. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, probably
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah.
500 years from now, I think C.S. Lewis's Narnia series is all but forgotten. But
Yes.
the
Yes.
grandfather of modern fantasy as we know it, elves and orcs, kind of codified as we know them, yeah, I
Yes.
think he's sticking around. I think he's
Yes.
sticking around.
Oh,
And what
he.
is that? What is that? Well, he was Catholic, so that ties into something. And there's that
Mm,
verse: "You will know them by their fruit, like the
mm-hmm.
fruit of their works."
Mm-hmm.
Well, Catholics, by and large, have done a lot
Yes.
for human
Yeah.
civilization, and it was that alone. And so, I do think that ultimately, people need frameworks of being. Do I think that the Catholic way of being is the only acceptable way of being? Obviously not. This
Right.
whole country,
Right.
the country that we live in, that I call home, was founded on basically zero Catholics. Like
Yeah.
Catholics were that the the
Yeah.
English had walked away from the Catholic Church. So it was, if they were anything, they were Protestant or they were deists. They believed in God largely, but they kind of wanted to do their own thing, and Catholics wasn't part
Yes.
of it at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have a huge respect for George Washington and the founding fathers and what they brought about here, but that doesn't mean that Catholicism is what I should say. What this does mean to me is that of all these different ways of being, there are clearly some that work better than others.
Mm.
And
Mm.
for me, the thing that is talked about in the Catholic faith is that it has the fullness of truth. So there are multi. Can I say that for a fact that somebody that is not even they're not religious at all won't make it to heaven? Oh,
Mm. Mm.
let's assume that heaven is a happy place after you die. Like, and let's just leave it at that.
Sure.
There's
Sure.
that's a whole. I don't even we can't whatever. Let's just leave it at that. I don't know even how to conceptualize that really. So we'll just say that it's a happy place after you die. Do I know that the non-religious person, he's just trying to do the best that he can throughout life, won't make it to heaven? I don't know. That ultimately that's between he and God,
Yeah.
if that's how
Yeah.
that works.
Yes.
But I do think that if there is a framework that has led to so many benefits to society, that at the very least that shouldn't be ignored.
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I would like to be a part of, as far as I can tell right now. That's where I'm at right now. I could change my mind 6 months
Yeah.
from now and come
Yeah.
across something. I feel like I'm at the point where I was at before I really actually like put a large portion of my net worth into Bitcoin, where I was like, okay, I think
Yeah.
I've asked
Yeah.
every major question that I can. I don't see how a government shuts this down. I like once you do self custody, like I'd hit all the big things like quantum computing. Oh, yeah, maybe down the
Mm-hmm.
road, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other stuff that quantum computer people are probably going to want to hack before Bitcoin. Like, I don't know, the
Yes.
nukes and
Yeah. Right. Right.
um,
Right.
so I hit all the major things because when I first found about Bitcoin, I was like you was like, oh, this is a way to get. I thought it was another like stock. I just thought it was another
That's right.
option to
Yeah.
invest in.
Yeah.
Like that's all I thought it was. And then when I heard like, no, you should put whatever. Yeah, as most
Yes.
people do, is like, oh, this is not just another investment. This is a
Yes.
whole this is the whole thing.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah.
long answer.
No, it's great. That's a little, you, anyone who's listening could tell that you're like you've thought about this a lot, which is great, you know. But I wanted to go back to that point you made about Western civilization, um, in how Christianity kind of really impacted that explosion of what we now consider Western civilization. Um, that I actually think we're like consistently progressing towards something better through this foundation or these lens of Christianity. Um, I guess specifically maybe our morals. I guess, or I don't know what it. I guess yeah, perhaps the morals and the ethics of what it means to believe in a God and what it means for you to treat others and yourself. And I think this is how we got to Bitcoin. Even like
Mm,
we would not have this concept of Bitcoin without the foundation of Christianity, which is a really profound thing to think about. Because this is all coming back to this idea, what we talked about in the beginning, of the emphasis on the individual and the freedom that
yeah.
that individual has, in that it's a right, unalienable right, as the founders say, um, meaning it's like outside our purview of why that's right, but we know that that is right. Um, and um, it's just so interesting that the Satoshi guy, I don't know, was able to somehow, and he probably, we talk about this, I think, a lot in Bitcoin space, but he probably had no idea of all the different implications in which that um, code he 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 coded would have. Um, it's it's really mind blowing when you think about it, and the implications that it has on money, the implications that it has on theology, even Jason Lowry's idea of war. I mean, what other implications or have not even been thought about in regards to Bitcoin? Um, so yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually reading a book currently by Tom Holland called Dominion, where it really goes into the details of how Christianity established itself in the West and how Western civilization came about through that. It's really good. It's
Hmm.
extremely good. And then there's another book called Inventing the Individual. Actually, Robert Breedlove talks about this a lot. This book a lot. But that's kind of the same thing, but more from an individual perspective of how the individual became an individual.
Hmm.
Because there wasn't even a concept. If you go back into the Roman era days, there wasn't even a concept of individuality. Um, it was more emphasized on family dynamics and like your family could position you into a place of power or authority, and so your identity was wrapped in your family system very heavily.
Hmm.
Um, and then we get this weird Jesus guy who starts to flip this upside down. And when you kind of understand the context of, like when you read the New Testament and you come with it with this context of, okay, in this time there really wasn't much of a concept of individuality, but here Jesus is coming with a completely new idea of self love or self compassion, and also like compassion for others, which was just absolutely like going completely against what culture was even talking about, or thinking about. Um, and yeah, it just fascinates me. But yeah, I'd be curious what you think about that.
Well, I think it ties into, and I think this is maybe a good place to kind of wrap things up. You can tell me what you think about this. I was trying to think about what is the best version of society. I don't mean like some sort of weird utopia where there's no problems ever again. Like
Yeah.
that's I don't even know how that would work because what nothing ever breaks ever like again. So what
Right.
is the best like actual plausible version of society? And the best thing that I could come to that I've been able to envision is that things like it's kind of odd that I start here, but things still break down.
Yes.
Thing that's
Yeah.
you still get flat tires, you hit potholes, you things break, that's fine. But anytime that happens, anytime something goes awry, entropy takes its effect on
Yes. Yeah.
carbon, people call out what happened, and then there's people that are skilled enough to fix that problem. So somebody goes, "Oh, hey, look, this has got a hole in it," and they go, let's fix that hole. Let's cut
Yeah.
out whatever it is and put a patch there, and there we go. And there's expert craftsmen that know exactly how to do that. That seems to be basically the core of it. Anytime
Yes.
there's a problem, there are people that honestly address that problem and they fix the problem. And it
Yes.
doesn't matter what the problem is, that's what happens. Now, I, I, I guess in this society, there's no more crime. There, generally speaking, I don't know that people don't ever make mistakes, but I guess what I'm envisioning is that they wouldn't. They would all be following some path. Let's say that they're all the best possible versions of Christian
Yeah.
imaginable.
Yeah.
Well, then they have this framework in which to resist temptation. Was telling this idea to my wife the other night because as I was falling asleep, I had the idea of being in a pool and each temptation being kind of like a balloon that's just sort of, it starts
Mm.
out really small and then it just kind of grows until it gets to a
Yes.
point where it's rising up and you're trying to grab that one. You're like, on your own, you're
Yes.
trying to grab it and control it. And like, oh, and then another one comes up. But whatever this temptation is, like, oh, I'm going to eat more cake than I really know that I need. One slice was enough. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go, I don't know, watch some porn or I mean, whatever the
Yeah.
various
Yeah.
temptations are. It's going to be really hard to juggle all these rising temptations and do it. But if you had a net, some sort of large net that you could wrap all those things in and just cover the whole thing where they're popping up, and then all you
Yes.
had to do was hold on to that net,
Yes.
well, that would hold your problem. That would solve your problem. So that net was following this pathway is the way that I thought of it. It's following Jesus. It's going, hey, look, as long as I point my mind in this particular direction, then all these other problems are handled. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just solved. Like if I wrap my life around being a mechanic, then everything I see is going to be through the lens of a mechanic. I'm not going to see it as an artist. I'm going to see it as a mechanic. So certain
Yes.
things that an artist sees, the mechanic just won't even be on his radar at all. It's kind of Jordan Peterson talking about the gorilla basketball thing, where if you're not looking for
Yeah.
certain things, you're just gonna you literally won't even see it.
Yes.
So in regards to the perfect society, it's not that there aren't problems anymore. It's that people deal with those problems in an honest and timely manner.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to have some sort of framework for that to happen. And I don't think you can just pull that framework from out of yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm currently. Are you familiar with eschatology at all?
I've heard the word, but I couldn't tell you the first thing about it.
Okay, so eschatology basically is just end times stuff, right? And there's a pretty popular one that we always kind of think of, when we think about the end times of, Jesus coming back and Armageddon and all this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
well, I actually have a different approach or different view of eschatology, which is called post millennialism,
Hmm.
where it's this concept that from the time that Jesus uh, ascends to the Father, he makes the statement, "It's good that I go, so I can send the Helper to you, like the Holy Spirit."
Mm-hmm.
And there's this idea that ever since that moment, civilization has over time been getting gradually better in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm really holding on to that eschatological view of that. I think that the Holy Spirit is going to complete His job in the flourishment of human development.
Hmm.
Um, and I think Bitcoin is almost the next step to that flourishment. Could you imagine? We always say, "Fix the money, fix the world."
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine what really, really, what sound money could do for us, right? Um, it's inconceivable to even think about what could be achieved, But all that saying is that, um, yeah, there's something outside of us that seems to be directing our steps into something that is limiting suffering and the pain that we are experiencing. And I would say ultimately, too, that um, if I'm envisioning maybe a perfect world, I'm envisioning a world in which, obviously, to your point, there's still issues, there's still problems. We can't escape, you know, brokenness and entropy. Um,
Right.
but if we can really connect with ourselves and to connect with others and genuinely like have that compassion for humanity, we can. There's no telling like what level of success we can achieve through helping other people through the entropy.
Yeah, the amount of misused, or maybe I should say misallocated time and energy is, you can't even begin to wrap your head around it. I mean,
Right.
anytime some new big video game release comes out, some new Call of Duty, usually within the first week or so, the developers proudly will post on Twitter, within the first 72 hours, X million hours across all players were spent in the game. This many bullets were shot or whatever. Or if it's a new Pokemon game, this many steps were taken. They'll have all these
Yeah.
stats, these infographics of how much time was spent on this game, as though it's a point of pride that X hundreds of thousands or millions of people spent this much time in their game doing these tasks that are ultimately meaningless.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it it's neat, I guess,
Right.
on one hand, but then on the other hand, I think how much, when you were just saying this is the idea that came to me, was how much in aggregate of all of the things,
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that people
Mm-hmm.
do, if all of that was directed in a singular direction, like, and
Yeah.
I don't mean like, oh, we're all working on the same bridge or the
Right.
one
Right.
boat. I don't mean that. I mean just like societally as a globe, we're working towards something like the betterment of the planet, and that
Yeah.
might mean somebody's
Yeah.
a gardener, that might mean that you're Elon, you're building starships to work on the I don't the transit line that goes back and forth between Mars, or like whatever
Yeah.
this means.
Yeah.
It's going to mean different things to different people, but if all of that time and energy was sucked out of making 300 different pairs of Nike shoes because it's going to be worn out after inside of 9 months or whatever, because you're a shoemaker, you're an actual
Yeah.
professional cobbler, and you make one pair of shoes
Yeah.
every 3 days because that's all people need. They need
Right.
one pair
Right.
of regular shoes and one pair of like nice shoes. That's it. Not a
Yes.
closet full of shoes because
Yeah.
they're falling apart and they're all in different states of dismantling. Like
Yes.
just the amount of wasted time and energy, and all because of broken money. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It is truly inconceivable to know what a sound money would do to human flourishing. I hope that I live to see even an inkling of that.
Yes. Yes. Me too, man. Me too. But we can see the trend. We can kind of see
Yeah,
that trend happening. Um,
yeah,
so it's really beautiful to watch. And I'll just say, man, thanks for doing your part with the content. And um, you were when you were on Simply, you were pretty. I was looking forward to your content quite a lot.
yeah. I try to bring some of that to the Mining Disrupt channel. I know it's nowhere near as big, and it's a different vibe over there. And I ran to the Simply guys when I was at the Mining Disrupt expo down there in Florida. I like what they do. I like the awareness that they bring to Bitcoin,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
the amount of time that was required to keep on doing stuff with them was too much. It like that
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
world requires kind of like you to live online to
Mm-hmm.
just be like up to the second on what's happening so that you can make a news story about it, because sometimes you got to get some news story breaks and you're like, I got to get a video
Wow.
out within half an
Yeah.
hour, because if I don't, 300 other YouTube channels are going to cover it, and then by the time we get ours out tomorrow, which is
Yes.
12 hours way too late, then nobody's
Right.
going to want to pay attention. It's just like
Yeah.
it was just it never ended, and I just said
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I saw where it was going. I was like, I need to do other things. Like part of the Bitcoin ethos is like I was just talking about, like respecting your time. And I am
Yes.
all for the people that are, nose to the grindstone hustling because maybe they don't have as big of a stack as they want, or like I don't know, different people have
Yep.
different goals and different
Yep.
mindsets. So I can't say what's right for somebody else. All I know is that living perpetually online was
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done
Yeah.
that. I did that when I was in my teens and 20s and 30s, and now I'm 40 and
No,
I'm
that makes a
good.
lot of sense, man. That like makes a lot of sense. But I still catch your mining disrupt stuff and some of your personal things that you do. So it's good, man. I appreciate your intentionality, your authenticity. It's really inspiring. It's great, man.
Thanks. And thanks for having this chat with me.
Absolutely, man. Later.
All righty.